thing that I'm going to be doing is just going through my brows really quick with some brow gel. This is the Benefit Give Me Brow. It thickens your brows a little bit. I'm going to be doing this to prepare my brows for filling in later. Lately, I have been outlining and kind of mapping out my brow shape while priming my eyes, which I'll show you in a minute. I'm then going to be taking my Tarte Tape Shade in the shade Fair Neutral. Very neutral. And with a Crown SS04 Oval Concealer Brush, I am going to be cleaning up the base of my brow. This is what I meant by mapping it out. And I like the Tarte Tape Shape for this reason because it's so full coverage. It will cover and conceal any type of new hair growth that you may have on your eyebrows. I mean, look at that. That is just totally covered. And this technique of kind of mapping out the brow, I learned from P. Louise Makeup Academy on Instagram. If you're not following them, you need to be because their makeup is seriously goals. So the first shadow that I'm going to be taking is Safe Word from the Jeffree Star Androgyny palette. And I'll be using this on a Morphe M433 brush. Kind of starting first of all in my crease, and I'm kind of hitting it right on top of where my brow bone starts to protrude. And I'm just going to be doing small circular motions all the way from this corner to my inner corner with this color. So once I have this color built up to my liking, which is about right here, and I'm really being pretty careless on how far I blow this out because we are going for a pretty dramatic smoky eye with this one, so the further it can be blown out, the better. So I'm liking this. We're gonna stop right there for now. I'm then gonna be taking my Morphe M519 brush that looks like this guy right here. I'm gonna be taking the color Dominatrix from the same palette. And for this color, I'm gonna be hitting it right underneath the brow bone, or right underneath where my brow bone starts to protrude on my eyelid. Going back to P. Louise Makeup Academy on Instagram, a lot of the techniques that I'm trying out today, or have been trying out and now showing on camera, they are from them. Again, you guys, they have great tips. I would suggest to follow them. The same thing, once I have this intensity of color built up, I'm going to go back to the first brush that we used for the first color, and I'm just going to do little circles where those two colors meet. Next, I'm going to be taking my Morphe M502 brush, and we are going to be using the color Fetish. So I want to get that warmth of red in there, so I'm going to be using this and going over on top of Dominatrix. Once I have that color applied, I'm going to go back to the brush that we used Dominatrix, and I am just going to go through again just so we don't lose that brown shade. And you guessed it, I'm gonna go back with the first brush that we used and just kind of going over the very top edge of this again, just to make sure we are crossing our T's and dotting our I's with our blending. Next, to make this smoky eye really, really opaque, I'm gonna be taking my Essence Smoky 2-in-1 Kohl Liner. And I'm gonna just be applying this all over my lid from the root of my lashes up into about my crease. And I would be somewhat mindful of the shape of this because where you place this is gonna be your tacky base for the black shadow we're gonna apply on top. And if you go all over the place a little too ununiform, it could show through once you apply the black matte shadow. I'm then gonna be taking Stiletto from the Too Faced Natural Love palette, which mine looks super busted, but it's because I use it all the time. And I will be packing this on with a Marc Jacobs The Shadow brush. But first, there's nothing to this. You are literally just gonna be patting this on. Make sure you're going right over top wherever that Kohl liner was placed. Once you've already placed all the black shadow on top, I'm gonna start somewhat, very lightly blending. I'll then be taking a much smaller brush. This is the Morphe M506. It is a very, very tiny little blending brush. Picking up some Stiletto, and I will just be running this over into the crease. Once I've gone over all these edges, I'm going to be taking a little bit of Makeup and Chill from that Natural Love palette, and I'm just going to go over that crease again. So now we're just really trying to hide where that really dark lid color begins. I'm also taking just a little bit more of Fetish. And then for the liner, which is the star of the show, I'm going to first be laying down a regular wing with my Kat Von D Tattoo Liner and Trooper. I'm going more for like a thick upward cat eye liner. So in order to achieve that look, you want to make sure that you map out the base of your wing a little bit higher angled than straight, unless you want it one of those straight out kind of liners. So for this one, I'm trying to aim it higher than usual. May not always be the best option for hooded eyes like mine, but we're gonna just go with it. So like I said, this was a bit of a rough draft. I'm now gonna go over this liner with some liquid liner so I can see the line a little bit better. So there you can see that the liner looks a lot darker, which is gonna be a lot easier for us when we start to put the glitter. So for the glitter, I'm gonna be using my NYX glitter adhesive. And then the glitter I'm using today is from Beauty Creations. It's their gold glitter. I don't have the name right now, but hopefully I can find it and list it down below. And it's in a bag. It comes in a nice little cute glass bottle, but mine, I dropped it. It was a mess. So I salvaged it in this little Ziploc bag. So I have mine in here. So what we're gonna be doing for this glitter liner is working one section at a time throughout the liner. So I'm gonna be taking an angled brush and applying that glitter adhesive, which I personally have been really enjoying because it's very creamy and you have a little bit of a playtime to work with it. So like I said, one section first. I'm then switching to an angled brush, another one, and pressing that on. We're just gonna continue this throughout the whole liner. So once we have all that glitter pressed on throughout the liner from beginning to end, to give it that little bit more of a multicolored disco kind of glitter look, I'm gonna be going over lightly, just kind of sparsely on some areas with the NYX Liquid Crystal Body Glitter in Crystal Hip, which I don't know if you can really see it on camera, but this is like it has like reflex of multicolored glitter. And that's what kind of gives it that fun little pops of color. So now that the eyes are for the most part somewhat done, we're gonna go on to the rest of the face and do that before we finish off the eyes. I'm just taking a little makeup wipe here and I'm just going to kind of clean up a little bit, because currently it is in the 40s in McAllen, Texas, which is pretty cold for us. I will be using the Bare Minerals Good Hydrations Primer, which I like because I'm pretty oily, but this one doesn't seem to make me very greasy at all. So I think it just moisturizes lightly, but it does act as a very good primer, especially if you're using a more matte foundation like the one I'll be using today. So for foundation, I'm gonna be using the Fenty Beauty Pro Filter Foundation. I am in the shade 170. It is a tad bit darker than my natural skin color right now, but it works when I do like the highlighting with my concealer. So I figured it's still an okay choice to use. If you are somewhat my skin tone, you may wanna go just like a shade lighter, but when I went to go buy mine, they didn't have very many options left. This foundation, you do want to make sure you shake it pretty well before applying. It does make a huge difference. To blend out this foundation, I'm going to be using a beauty blender. I like to go over the lips with foundation just to blank it out. You don't have to do that. I know not everyone's into that, but I am. If you're like me and you have dark hair and you happen to get makeup like on the hair near your hairline, just go over it with a makeup wipe and a makeup remover wipe and it should come right off. For highlighting and concealing, I'm going to use my Revlon Color Stay. I'm using the shade 01 Fair, which is the lightest. I'm not sure if this is going to be light enough. No, I think it will be. You do want to fan this out so you have this whole upper cheek area highlighted. And lately I've just been sticking to highlighting this part of my face and forehead. I've kind of been avoiding the chin area. So to make this highlight just slightly brighter, I am taking a little bit of the Kevyn Aucoin Supernatural concealer and just dotting a little bit onto the under eye area. And then with the same beauty blender, just blending that out. And then I'm also just going to be setting my under eye area only, not the rest of my face. I've been kind of liking an unset foundation recently, so I'm going to be using the Maybelline Fit Me Loose Finishing Powder, which I've been loving. If you guys haven't tried this, you need to. I use the lightest shade in Fair, which works pretty well. They probably could make a shade a little bit lighter, but I'm not complaining. That's being set and somewhat baking, I'm gonna be using the Benefit Hoola Bronzer to just warm up the perimeter of my face. If you are going for a unset foundation look, I would suggest doing this after a few minutes. Like, give your foundation some time to dry on its own, since we're not using any powder to dry it immediately. The brush that I'm using for bronzing is the Morphe M527, which has been my go-to for months already. Then to set the highlighted areas of our face, I'm gonna be taking my Bare Minerals Bare Pro Contour Palette, which I really like. The only shade that's a little tricky is the blend shade. It's supposed to be like your bronzer shade, but it pulls really, really orange. So if you're someone who is not into a really, really orangey type of bronzer, then you're probably gonna hate that. I'm taking my Morphe M528 brush and using the Pop shade, which is your highlight shade. And I'm just gonna be dusting this over and removing the excess powder, the Maybelline powder that we had. And then to contour, I'm using the first shade, which is called Shade. It's a very cool tone contour color, which I really enjoy. And I'm just gonna be placing this on the very back part of my cheekbone. And me personally, my makeup is not complete unless I do a little nose contour action, so that's exactly what I'm gonna do next. To highlight, I do want a bit of a blinding highlight since the eyes are so dramatic. I feel like it's only appropriate to do a very striking, ridiculously bright highlight. I'm gonna be using the Jeffree Star Skin Frost in Ice Cold, which is perfect if you have fair skin. And I've actually been changing my brush up a little bit with my highlighting. I used to always use this tapered one from Morphe, and now, especially if you want a very intense highlight, I would suggest using something like this one. This is also from Morphe. It's their M524 brush. It's really short and fat, but I like it because you can really pinpoint where you want your highlight to be placed. Then do switch over to a much smaller brush to highlight my nose, since it's such a small little area. I want to keep the blush very subtle and light, so I'm using the Kylie Cosmetics Barely Legal blush, which is just a very matte, soft pink. Pinky peach. I'm using the Morphe M402, and the shape of this brush just kind of does everything for you. So I'm just lightly pressing and flicking upwards towards the top of my cheekbone. To finish off the eye look, we're gonna first finish off the eyebrows because that's gonna give us the frame. And again, it's gonna be pretty easy since we've already mapped out our shape with the eye primer. So I kind of fill that in first so it's the darkest. And then whatever's left on my brush, I'm using it to kind of just push up through the front of my brow here. Give it a little bit more dimension with my Benefit 3D Brow Tones. This is the shade 4. I probably could use the shade 5, but I don't have it. So now we're gonna finish off the eye look because this is what it looked like completely done. So to finish it off, we're gonna be lining our bottom waterline with some of that Kohl Liner. I'm taking the shade Stiletto again, and I'm using a Luxie 221 brush. It's just a flat shader brush, so any flat shader brush will work. And I'm using this to smoke out and set that black liner. You want it to be relatively thick since we are kind of bringing this down pretty far. And then taking a little bit of Makeup and Chill with a smudge brush. This is from Crown. Doesn't have a name though. And I'm placing that pretty much directly on top. Then going back to the Dominatrix shade from the Androgyny palette, I'm gonna be using this to start to smoke this out. And then just taking a little bit of Fetish, again, just to add a little bit of that redness to it. I'm taking a really small Real Techniques blending brush, and I'm gonna go in with the color Safe Word, and this is what we're gonna really smoke it out with. And what's kind of cool about when you really smoke out a look like this is that if you have those fine lines underneath, it's okay because you smoked it out so far that you pretty much covered them. And just to make sure we didn't lose the intensity of the black, I'm just gonna take that flat shader brush and go over once more. Before we pop on any lashes, I'm gonna be just coating my top and bottom lashes in the Marc Jacobs Velvet Noir Mascara. For the eyelashes, I'm using a pair from Dodo Lashes, but I don't have the box anymore, so I don't know what style this is. I would just suggest don't go with something too cool or too long that's gonna take away and cover up your glitter liner. So of course, to finish off the face, we're going to want to finish with the lips. I'm first gonna be outlining mine with the Kylie Dolce K liner and then filling in with the Too Faced Lip Injection Gloss in Spice Girl. And of course, the last thing is gonna be to set with your favorite setting spray. I always prefer the Urban Decay All Nighter.